amazing writer. He's written an incredible autobiography, I guess you'll say. And the name of the book is Weak Start, Unapologetic Present. And Mr. Lester Patrick has written this book. He hails all the way from Winterville, North Carolina, but he lives now the valley of San Francisco, or I don't know what is that, San Joaquin? It's the little valley area. You're unmute. And
Yes,
so,
San Joaquin Valley.
and so we're delighted to have him, and he is going to share with us a collection of memories and stories and experiences through his childhood up to the current day. And when I first talked to him and met him, I was inspired by his experiences and his capacity to remember. And one of the things that I think was the keynote for his book and that kind of thing is his capacity for inspiration through probably sounds like some difficult times. But look at him. He's got his bright, shiny head like my own. But he's a great author and a great guy. And his book is Weak Start, Unapologetic Present. So, Mr. Lester Patrick, share with us, please, about your book and your time and your experiences in that regard, so we can have it among our catalogs.
Sure. Thank you so much for that nice introduction. And I would like to again say good evening to everybody, and a special greeting to all of the Aggies on the call.
Yeah.
The title of my book is Weak Start, Unapologetic Present, A Journey Through Jim Crow, the Information Age to God. My book is an autobiography. I talk about the weak start that I had in my life, growing up in Winterville, well, in North Carolina in general. Some experiences living under Jim Crow, my long career in information technology industry. I was in the industry for a little over 40, well, almost 42 years. And some of my spiritual experiences with God I talk about. And I go into some level of detail about those. I also talk about my lifelong efforts in advocacy and volunteerism. I feel very strongly about advocating for those things and those people who need advocating for. And I have dedicated the very last part of the book specifically to advocacy and volunteerism. I think some of the highlights of the book start, I should say, with a decision that I had to make at 5 years old. There was a short period of time between, say, 3 and 5 years old, where I was living between three households. And at 5 years old, I was presented with the question of who do you want to live with? So I had to make that decision. And I know that I made the right decision, but I know that I made the right decision, but if I had not made the right decision, my life would have been a lot different than it turned out. I also believe that one of the highlights of this book has to do with some of the laws that were in effect during Jim Crow that I grew up under. Believe it or not, when I was a teenager, I was lectured to about the reckless eyeballing law. Our teachers talked to us about it all the time. I remember standing at the whites only lunch counters. And I talk about those experiences. I talk also about some of the opportunities and successes that I had during my career in information technology or in the industry. Throughout my career, wherever I was one of no more than 2 or 3 at the most. And there are special challenges, or there were special challenges that came along with that type of an environment. I also talk about segregated school environment. I we 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 received hand-me-down books, hand-me-down um, band uniforms, hand-me-down everything, second-hand from the white schools. We were segregated. We were separate and unequal. And making a difference in the lives of people through advocacy and um, and volunteerism is one of the things that I consider as being a highlight. After I attended North Carolina A&T, and I graduated 72. Yeah. And I joined the Navy. And this is my first introduction to technology that would pave the way for my lifelong career in technology um, and the information technology industry. My first duty station was overseas in Morocco. I was given my first choice of duty station. At the time, I had no idea that it was isolated duty, first of all. And not only was it isolated duty, but I was stationed on a secret base. Congress didn't even know that it was there. They thought it was somewhere else. So we were out in the middle of the desert. And the Russians had a very small facility just about a mile across the desert, and they were there for one reason, and that reason rather was to hinder our ability to be able to provide communications to the fleet in the Atlantic Ocean and around the world, because we provided ships and submarines uh, and also broadcast radio free Europe throughout that part of the country. That experience I talk about also was a kamikaze like working environment. And I go into detail about that in the book. It was a it was an exciting environment. And I do my best to try to bring that out. Leaving Morocco, I went to the Philippines. And in the book, I talk about international Jim Crow while overseas. I reference some of the things that some of us African Americans did to counteract the Jim Crow overseas. And our whole goal or objective was to improve the image of African Americans overseas. And I talk in detail about that in the book. I left the Philippines and I was relocated here to Stockton, California. And when I got here, I was really exposed to cutting edge technology of the day. But at the same time, I found myself in my life defending myself against several false accusations. And this was a really serious situation. Um, I talk about attending, for example, an arraignment for a court martial, but surviving it. Um, Up until within an hour from the time I was discharged, believe it or not, the Navy was still trying to give me a dishonorable discharge for something that were just false accusations. But they didn't give up. But I overcame it. That was an experience for me that taught me a lot of lessons, and I talk about that in the book. And I'm sure that those lessons can help some people who will read the book, because you might think that, well, let me put it, I had an opportunity to develop hate and bitterness for that institution, but I didn't. And I had to make a special uh, uh, effort to understand what had happened and separate the institution from the handful of people that I was dealing with at that time. So um, I think that's a good experience that I include in the book. I then entered civilian life. And the job, I entered civilian life at a time when we were in the middle of a recession. And I had to deploy some non-traditional methods of obtaining a job and then moving up through my career. And I go into detail about that. Things that I just simply sat down and say, this is not going to work. The regular things, ways of getting ahead are not going to work. I don't have the connections that I need. So I had to find a way to do it. And I was able to do that. Um, and I talk about one particular situation that whereby I obtained my first job in information technology at a postal data center, and that position led to me being able to participate in one of the very first implementations of a national digital wide area backbone in the country. Um, and because this was at the time when Judge Harold Green, had just divested uh, uh, A&T, AT&T, I'm sorry. And as a result of that, it opened up a lot of opportunities. And I was in the right place at the right time because some of the instructors, some of the professors at Golden Gate University were also called upon to be expert witnesses in that case. And they were giving us firsthand information before it was even printed. So that was a great experience. I got the opportunity to design a wide area network for a federal agency. Um, Not everybody gets that opportunity. I designed several telemedicine networks across the country during that period of time. And I also served as an associate professor of telecommunication at two colleges during my career. There were some tragedies during this period of time that I had also, and I talk about those in detail. Um, so you might ask the question, with all of those things, what does the reader gain from this book? Well, anybody who reads this book will get a wealth of insight into what it was like during the Jim Crow period. We can read history books, but I write my life just as a regular person, you know, and I share those experiences that I had. Um, I also highlight during my writing this the strong family life that existed in my family during Jim Crow, and I give examples of, of persistency because we had to have that in order to survive. Advocacy, as I stated earlier, is one of the, I believe, one of the most important things that we can do today. I created an organization early in my career called Parents and Citizens for Quality Education. And we had a number of successful projects that I talk about in the book. We impacted the educational system in California. We, and I talk about some of those things. As far as community work is concerned, today, as I have retired, I've been retired now for about 4 years. It's really important that we make ourselves available to serve on boards because we can do things on an individual basis whereby we might touch a family, might touch a person, or what have you. But when you do things like I serve on as a commissioner of the Housing Authority of San Joaquin County. When you go to Washington, D.C. a couple of times a year and you meet with congressmen and senators and you advocate for low-income housing for the poor, and the homeless, you can have a much greater impact because that impacts the nation, not just one or two people. I also serve on the board of directors for Family Resource and Referral. And Family Resource and Referral, we provide uh, uh, family resources for low-income families and their children. And we're in 13 counties across California. We have a budget about $60 to $65 million that that we have available to us. And I also serve on the board of the Strong Communities Committee and the Delta College Bond Oversight Committee. You know, when you sit on these committees, and some people might already know this, you have a great opportunity to really influence the local communities. And you can do this. The good thing is that you can do this without running for office because you usually get appointed to them. So I would urge everybody, anybody, to serve on these on boards and committees. So what would I leave for an audience listening tonight about what they would get from my book and some ending comments? And I just have 3 points, and one of them would be to children and young adults. And I would say, don't allow anybody to decide for you the image of a person that you want to be. Decide that for yourself. Accept mentoring, but you are the one in charge. And I would say to adults, take the opportunity to invest time in young people. There are so many young African American males, for example, and girls too, actually, that need mentoring. And they don't need a lot of time. You know, in some cases, just having the presence of a male can make a difference in the life of some of these young kids. Um, and to everybody, I would say advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves for whatever reason it may be. And that's, I think, is a high level overview of what's in my book. And I would strongly urge the audience to take the opportunity to read the book.
Mhm. Very good, Lester. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I mean, one of the things that you just simply outlined at the least was a strong perception of yourself, and that you have decided that no one gets to define who you are but you, which I think is a very important testament for people to understand both now and later. You know, comment on that if you will.
Yeah, sure. That is absolutely correct. I mean, and I'll give you an example. When I was ready or prepared to go to school, you know, during the time that I came along, um, society didn't expect me to go to school. They
Yeah.
didn't expect me to attend college, but I had some relatives who did. I had relatives who lived next door, for example, and they mentored to me, and they helped me to understand through through their success that I could do some of these things too.
Mm.
So I learned at an early age that I could not let society decide for me what I wanted to do in life because if I had, I wouldn't be here tonight because
Mm.
society had already decided that I was not equal to others or as a non-white individual
Mm.
because we had laws in place to prevent that from happening, really.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so, you know, I think that's a very strong point that you made. that we cannot allow, or I would say to young people, don't allow others to define for you who you want to be and what you want to be. You
Right.
have to do it yourself.
So obviously, someone poured into you, loved one, your relatives, your family, poured into you and made you understand that the power of who Lester Patrick, as you reflect in your book, it was essential and capable and gave you real power, your real power. So your last points of making sure that we take the time to pour into our youth, pour into other people, and pour into the people that are at the cornerstone or at the cusp of those kind of decisions. I mean, you take a kid who's in gangs, and they don't want to be, but it's because of their environments that they find themselves into those environments. That if someone had poured into them or that pour into them could help them understand that you have the capacity to make better decisions. My.
That is absolutely correct. I didn't say during my presentation, but I include this in the book. For at least 13 years, I have conducted a mentoring program uh, for males, and it's a peer mentoring program. And I see too many young African American males who, before they get into sixth grade, have decided that they're going to be a failure. So it's, and I mentioned earlier that it only takes, in some cases, just the presence of another male to help them understand it, that they don't have to go down, take a negative path to life. It doesn't take a lot, seriously.
Uh, Wow, Lester, what an amazing a book! What an amazing testament! And you should see the book. On the book cover, it's got a picture of the Greensboro Four sitting at the Woolworth counter, demanding to be served. Wow! What an amazing story! Thank you for that, Lester. I mean, this book is amazing, and I think it would be to your benefit to capture a copy of it, to read it. And for the readers out there, I don't know, or the Aggies out there, he even describes his experience at Scott Hall. For those of you that went to A&T on the line, you know what Scott Hall was actually one of the largest housing facilities on an academic university campus, not just in the state, on the East Coast. And,
Yes.
Scott Hall has a great reputation. Are there any other questions anybody might have? Wow. Uh, don't forget, Lester, please put the details about your book on your chat so that people who are interested can link to get a copy of it. We are in the middle of launching a facility program for Lester for his book promotions. It's an amazing book, and those of you who read and read voraciously, I think you'll be benefited by it according to our own experiences. And so I'm excited about getting with and sitting down with Lester on the West Coast or East Coast, and we'll talk more formidably about the book and the experiences. I mean, because Aggies go coast to coast. Yes, yes.
Very good.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Lester, for that. And we'll be back with you soon to promote and develop the book developments. Amazing, amazing.
Thank you.
Very good, very good, very good. Okay, so moving forward, we are now moving toward another one of our speakers, Mr. Bill Pinckney. He has written the book, A Tale of Two Climates, One Real and One Imaginary. Now, this book even now seems even more profound than some time ago because of climate. And I don't know what happened this year, but climate has taken an explosive position